Hey everyone, welcome back to Southern Gal True Crime. I share missing persons, cold cases, true crime news, and more. David Wayne Waggoner went missing on October 9th, 1971 from Pasadena, Texas. He is a white male. He was 23 years old at the time he went missing. He will be 76 years old now. At the time he went missing, he was 5'9" and 160 pounds. He was known to wear a watch, and he usually wore dress shirts and slacks or blue jeans. He had black hair and brown eyes. He has small vertical scars on both of his cheeks and a horizontal scar on his chin. He wore dark-rimmed eyeglasses at the time of his disappearance, and he had broken his collarbone once and fractured his skull twice in motorcycle accidents just prior to his disappearance. And he is slightly deaf in his left ear. So David last spoke to his family on October 9th, 1971 from Pasadena, Texas. After that, he has never been heard from again. He apparently took with him just his wallet and a 9mm firearm. His car with the key in the ignition was found parked in front of his apartment on Lafferty Street in Pasadena. And some clothes, his suitcase, and a small amount of money were left inside of his home. A hunter located David's red Honda 350 motorcycle in the woods off of U.S. Highway 59 in Cold Springs, Texas, which is 70 miles north of Houston, approximately 2 weeks after his initial disappearance. His helmet was sitting on top of the motorcycle, but there has been no trace of David since that time. So David's family believes that he may have been accosted by James C. Humpy Parker, who was the then sheriff of San Jacinto County, Texas. James and two of his deputies did go to prison for detaining and torturing young men that they met on U.S. Highway 59 during the 1970s and early 1980s. And it says in particular, they like to target what they called hippies, African-American men, motorcyclists, and men with bumper stickers advertising rock stations. So they were caught in 1983. They each received a 10-year prison sentence. James and his son Gary, who was a reserve deputy with the department, also faced federal charges for arresting motorists on trumped-up charges to extort bail money from them. James's crimes actually became the subject of a book and movie called Terror on the Highway by Steve Sellers. He and his accomplices have not been linked to David's case, however. James passed away in federal prison in 1999. Gary was eventually released, but he was charged with burglary and aggravated kidnapping in 2008. So David did serve 4 years in the United States Marines. He was unemployed at the time of his disappearance. Apparently, he had quit his last job several weeks before he went missing because he was bored with it. He was close to his parents, who did live nearby, and his sister. And his loved ones do not believe that he would have left without warning. They also stated that he was not depressed or did not have any ideations of self-harm in 1971 at the time he disappeared. Unfortunately, his parents are now deceased, but his sister is still searching for him, and authorities do believe that he may have been taken against his will. So his sister, Diana Waggoner Sherbet, says, "I miss him so much. I've missed him all this time, and I have prayed to God every day since he's been gone." And even though it's been 53 years since David disappeared, Diana refuses to give up looking for answers. Diana and David grew up with their two older siblings in Rockport, Texas. She says, "We did everything together here in Rockport. Growing up, we were always at the beach, playing baseball, just doing things together." David graduated from high school in 1966 and joined the Marine Corps soon after. Diana says he would come home on leave. David got out of the Marine Corps, I think it was 1970. By then, Diana was married and had moved out. Their parents had left Rockport, and they were living about 3 hours away in Pasadena, Texas, which is just outside of Houston. When David got out of the Marine Corps, he did find work in Pasadena. Diana says he lived in an apartment close to my mom and dad. At the time, he didn't have a phone, and David lived alone in that apartment. It is unclear exactly when he was last seen or heard from, but in October of 1971, alarm bells began to go off for David's family. His sister says, my mom hadn't seen him in a couple of weeks, and she went over to the apartment complex, and the manager said she hadn't seen David for about a week, and Diana thinks that this exchange occurred around October 9th. The manager did agree to open David's apartment for their mother. When she went into the apartment, it was just like he was coming back, Diana said, explaining that nothing really looked out of place. The family, however, did identify two things that were missing. Diana says he had a motorcycle and it was gone, and we knew he had a firearm. The firearm was not in the apartment. Diana thought maybe David had just gone to do some target practice. She says he would go target practice. We didn't think much of it. She also says he loved riding his motorcycle, and despite having previously had injuries, she says he had 2 skull fractures and was in Corpus Hospital for some time, and then he had other accidents and he had broken his collarbone. Diana says at first the family thought maybe David just wanted to get away. She says he had quit his job about a week or two before that happened, before he disappeared. She goes on to say, the longer it went on, my husband Rick said, Diana, there's no way your brother would have just left and not gotten in touch with you. So my mother went to the police department and reported him missing, and that was the Pasadena Police Department. Dateline spoke with Detective C.A. McGregor of the Pasadena Police Department. He works in the Violent Crimes Unit, and he also is the head of the Cold Case Unit. He says back in 1971 is when the report was originally taken, that he left home and hadn't been seen from or heard from. When his family inquired later on in 1995, they couldn't find the original report, so they created a case number in 1995 and then kind of picked up the case from there. McGregor also told Dateline that he has reached out to various agencies to obtain as much information as he could on the case, but there wasn't much information to gather. He says it wasn't so much like we had a crime scene, like a homicide, to have processed and then had evidence. This is a missing persons case, and the only thing that was recovered was his motorcycle and helmet along the highway. David's motorcycle was recovered north of Pasadena along Highway 59 about 2 weeks after he was reported missing. Detective McGregor says it runs from Mexico all the way up to Canada. Where his motorcycle was found was maybe an hour from Pasadena. He goes on to say it's a major highway, but it wasn't off in the woods on trails or anything. It was literally just on the side of the highway, key in the ignition, and the helmet resting on the bike. It was processed by the San Jacinto County back in 1971. The San Jacinto County Sheriff's Office handled the search for David in that area. Detective McGregor says, from reading the report, they conducted a canvass in the event that he had wandered off into the woods, and the initial search, nothing was found. Dateline did reach out to San Jacinto County Sheriff's Office to ask about their initial search efforts in the case, but they did not hear anything back. Detective McGregor told Dateline there was a deceased person found at some point later on in the forested area off of that highway, but it turned out not to be David Waggoner. Diana also went up to the area where her brother's motorcycle was found. She says you could search for days. I mean, it was so thick in there. She says nothing else was ever found that was connected to David. She told Dateline that she has some theories about what might have happened to her brother, but none of them have yet to be proven. There is one thing Diana knows for certain. She says, I would not ever believe that my brother David would commit self-harm on himself. According to Detective McGregor, the department does not have much to go on. He says there's not much information to reclassify or articulate that there was foul play involved. Nothing's going on in his life that would make us believe, oh, he was involved in something that would cause his demise or be the subject of foul play. That's kind of the unfortunate part, is just the lack of information. Even though it's been half a century since David disappeared, McGregor says his case does remain open. He says it comes down to what evidence we come across. Tips are definitely wanted, but it's what we can do with that information given the time frame that's passed to which you can corroborate. McGregor says it is difficult to confirm information that does come up 50 years after the fact. He says a lot of information is perishable. The only thing that was found was his motorcycle, and that's the only thing we have to go on. And again, that was recovered back in 1971, which presents a challenge today. He says the way they processed crime scenes and how they handled evidence was way different than how we do it now. With most of the family now gone, Diana has dedicated herself to getting answers for her younger brother. She says, I have a notebook, and I've been, of course, over the years making notes. I've contacted, I couldn't tell you how many talk shows, she said. And David's story was told on the Vanished podcast in 2016. Diana reached out to Dateline, and she says, after I got the email, it was kind of like I didn't even know what to think. I didn't want to get my hopes up, and I started crying. And I said, thank you, God. Every time someone finds out about David and wants to do something, I know God is responsible for that. If David were still alive today, he would be turning 77 years old in November. Diana says he was 23, almost 24 when he disappeared. I wasn't that much older than him, but I was very protective of him. David was 5'9" or 5'10" and weighed between 160 and 170 pounds when he went missing. He had dark brown hair, brown eyes. He wore glasses. Detective McGregor says his department does have David's dental records on file, and he has collected DNA from Diana to help identify him in the event that he is ever found. Diana says, I probably in my heart know that he's not alive, but there's always that little bit of hope. So if you have any information about the disappearance of David, please contact the Pasadena Police Department at 713-477-1221. You can also contact Detective McGregor at 713-475-7891. Please give this video a like. Please leave a comment. The most important thing you can do is share it anywhere and everywhere you can to help keep David's story out there, his face out there. His sister, after 50 years, is still trying to find out what happened to her brother. So, like I said, let's share this anywhere and everywhere we can. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.